Welcome back for another Union Arena video, and today we're going to be diving into Hunter x Hunter Volume 2, which is the latest set to drop in the game. So whether you're a new player who's looking to dive into Union Arena because you just love Hunter x Hunter, or you're a returning player who's excited for some upgrades, I'm going to cover the 7 different decks that you need to know about this set, and then talk if it is a hit or a miss at the very end with a updated tier list. But with that out of the way, let's dive in and talk about some new cards. So we have 4 new cards to talk about for the Hunter x Hunter Volume 2, which honestly are pretty exciting for each one of their respective decks they go into. I think the Kilua and the Illumi are like the best 2 by like a considerable margin, but just to highlight some of them overall. So we have the 4 energy Kurapika, which is really nice for like the more traditional build because it does have that 6 energy requirement. I do wish this fit better into the Gon and Friends style of deck because we get an extra active trigger, because it can give you the extra filtering, but due to that 6 energy requirement, it's only going to fit into the 7 cost Kurapika deck, and getting the extra draw is really nice. I think that's pretty solid, but it still falls a little bit short from like what that deck really wanted, but still a nice addition overall. Now, the biggest one is the Kilua, which does give us a 4K attacker, which is what we really needed for the Hisoka Gon and Kilua style of deck, because previously I had this 3500, which was okay to beef up Gon with, but with the way the meta is at, it lined up with like only a couple of good attacks and then the rest ones didn't really go anywhere. So we needed another 4K that we could push up, and this new 3 energy Kilua absolutely goes the distance for us, which is really nice. Up next, then we have the 2 energy Gon, which goes in the specified slot deck, which is just okay. It's an extra filter, and the important note here is that it can get the BP boost, which is really nice. So I think for that reason, you still run it as like an extra cheeky 4K attacker when you really need it. But for other than that, it's kind of something that feels like it's just a couple cards off for where we really want it to be. And then lastly, the Illumi is super cool because it was something that helps bridge the 0 to 2 energy gap for us, and it can draw us some extra cards. Now, the downside here is that it does still require you to line up a multiple card combo turn, which is really what held the deck back up until this point. But if you're able to line up these special removal and get all that extra card draw, you know, resolving that once is probably going to be able to find you enough cards to keep churning through your turns and finding the right removal. So the increased consistency is definitely a big one to pick up for that deck. Now, I don't know if I'm going to like the more Zoldak only focus or if the hybrid approach is still going to be the best. I have a feeling the hybrid approach is still going to be better, but we will have to wait and see. So diving into the lists themselves, as I kind of hinted at, we are going to have the Hisoka, Gon, and Kilua style of deck where they all want to be on your front line. And what's really nice about the Hisoka here is that it does give you extra protection in wanting to say, hey, if you want to target my guys, you have to discard a card as an additional cost. Otherwise, you're not getting to do it, right? And if you're able to line it up for multiple turns, obviously there's always going to hit the Hisoka first in this case, right? If you're able to strip your opponent's resources, you know, that can be really good at, well, setting them back. Now, the issue here, the key issue is that when we think about this deck overall, right, I have a whole video on what makes a tier 1 deck in Union Arena. I won't re-elaborate on that, right? But generally, draw engine, searchers, and good raid targets that want to attack, right? Unfortunately, Hisoka is not a raid, so he's going to be a turn slower. He is a 4500, which is really nice, but not having a raid is far too significant of a drawback, and, you know, the higher cost just does not work out here. And then the other Kilua that I mentioned, which is cool for how it works with Gon, super awesome flavor standpoint there, but in every other instance falls short. It's just not something that you can attack with. So generally you found yourself in a position where you have 2 okay attackers. Well, sorry, you have 1 really good attacker, 1 okay attacker, and then generally 2 that like, all right, I guess I have 2 attacks that might not even connect or do anything with, right? And so now getting the 3 energy Kilua that can go to the front line does help smooth that out a little bit, not a lot. But what's really important here is that we do have the Goryu for the filter, so we do have the 1-drop searcher, right? And that is a huge buff for just, well, all Hunter x Hunter decks in general. Anytime that we got the searcher added is a huge pickup. And we do have the Bisky as an extra draw, and you do have the option if you want to sideline to go through all that. But when we're playing such a high energy demanding style of deck, we often don't have the flexibility or the time to filter away the extra Biskies, right? We just want something that is going to give us the immediate value, and if it is a draw, either go into a notable raid, which unfortunately Bisky does not, or be good enough to promote to the front line to be an attacker, which ultimately Bisky is not either, right? Having like the 3 energy Ichigo from Bleach that can go up to a 4K attacker and also be raid fodder is a better example of this, right? Like in that case, you're happy to give up the draw trigger because being aggressive is infinitely more worth it in that regard. And then other than that, of course, we have our normal like special triggers and all that good stuff, but unfortunately, I think this is one that is going to fall a little bit short for where we normally want it. And while the color trigger is nice, it is still one of those situations where we really wanted a more consistent buffer, or something that's like if Hisoka is on the front line, he can buff everything by 1K like we have seen in other titles for Union Arena. Unfortunately, this is a set, and I'm going to try not to labor on this point too much, but this is a set that is a bit victim to it is a very early Union Arena set, and things like Black Clover, right, with the green, I'm totally going to blank on her name now, but the green boss deck that set has, she just gives 1,000, right? So that's where we can definitely see the difference in power level here, because you're not able to hit those important BP thresholds where you really want to. Now, moving on from there, we have Razor with the volleyball match from the series, and of course, Bisky playing another role here of just being a nice draw and double energy filter. But if there is a quick bone that I got to pick, it has to be with number 13. And I know that this would have been too good, and it's definitely too early for where this set was designed, but I really wish number 13 would have said something to the effect of, and maybe you have to start at 2,000 BP instead, right? I really wish it had a permanent stacking and not just during your turn. This is a card that should have effectively been the second raid for the deck, because it's something that you build up over time and eventually just become a perma 5-6, perma 5K, perma 6K, big old body that sits on the board, the master of the Nen Beast, the biggest boy of them all, and just blocking everything, right? Again, maybe it would have been too good, and that's why, it got changed the way it is, but ultimately, this is another deck that can really struggle from not finding its right pieces, or, again, Razor is really good that it has removal, so you do have the extra removal that you want. However, it does come with the caveat that it does require a little bit of setup based on the total number of characters that you have. So that does take us a little bit of time to set up, making sure we're getting all the right processes. Of course, the Razor Nen Beast 0 energy, we run 12 of them because we get the effect and because we can run up to 14 of them. So there are ways to build up into your deck strategy to get this payoff. But unfortunately, it does fall a little bit short because we don't have a notable searcher that is going to work for a raid target. Again, kind of being the key piece here. Like number 0 is fine in that regard for finding us number 13. But again, we don't have a second raid. That's really important. Or, if we didn't have the raid, maybe getting another BP boost, right? Would have been really important. So that's where we do see a little bit of the limiting of the strength in this deck. Again, from a overall feel perspective, Hunter x Hunter Volume 2 did a great job at smoothing out a lot of these deck lists. However, when we're staring things down like Kenshin, which also came out the same exact time, and looking ahead to next month with Kaiju number 8 and Yu Yu Hakusho, which are both like tier 1 considerations, it does feel very bad to have the 1 or 2 pieces just consistently missing from these Hunter x Hunter sets. Now, moving on from there, we do have the Kurapika deck that is not Kurapika, but the new version of it with Gon, which is, again, a slightly different variation. You can run a pure Kurapika deck if you really want to, but the new Gon actually works quite well with the Neon and getting to actually play it off of it and just giving you another 4K attacker. So if you are someone who wants to see more of this style of deck come together and have a slightly different play style with the Kurapika deck, right? We've seen like the melody lens of it as well. Then this is definitely one that you can check out too. However, I do think a lot of people will still be more so focused on the, what I'm going to just continue to call the traditional, where like you have the Basho for having the step and double energy, right? You have the other 5 color energy Kurapika, which can just get bigger and do the attack. But if you want to see Gon and Kurapika together in a deck that is just more of a, one turn faster style of play, because you are able to attack with like these 3Ks that come online early and can be rated into bigger stuff, right? This can be a deck that you're excited to play. Again, just making sure you're getting the opportunity to have Gon at the front line. And again, just having another impact, right? This is impact the deck at this point. But the important note here is that instead of the color trigger Kurapika, which couldn't be rated for the impact, Gon at least now gives you the option to pay the extra action point and say, okay, I'm still going to get my extra effect here, and I'm going to be able to go into my impact because I only need 2 or more. So this one itself does lend itself into the more Kurapika, or excuse me, Gon and Friends style of deck list, but this is like the hybrid between the two because ultimately you only need the 3 for this effect to work, and then Gon is going to be that AP attacker, which is really nice. Now going into the more, again, traditional Kurapika list, as I mentioned, again, it is nice that it fits in here as a 4 energy, and I included that just to include it, but it is something that, like, it's just another 4K. It's an active trigger, which is okay enough. But in my opinion, it just doesn't do enough to really bring the deck back up to its standard. I think the rest of the package is still good overall for what it wants to be. But if you are, very familiar with the traditional Kurapika, good green style of deck that goes tall, gets the color trigger, which is also the extra filtering and has impact as long as you have the energy generation, then this is like more the tried and true style that you're expecting, right? This is still going to be the best deck coming out of Hunter x Hunter Volume 2 with, again, no updates. If you really want to, you could skip the Kurapika. I'm just including here for the sake of, again, including it, even though it doesn't do as much as we might like for the deck. Again, like the 1-drop Kurapika to smooth out your turns is significantly more important for the deck than the 4 energy, believe it or not. So that's where it is kind of like a little bit funny. Like where this deck really needed help was the earlier game because your top end is already just so strong what it wants to be doing. Now, again, of course, the disclaimer here that the 4 energy Kurapika is very nice because it plays well with the Neon, so that's still another target that we can get, and going back up to 4 Neon is fine then in that regard, but it is still something that we have to, wait and see how this all comes together because otherwise it's still just 5K body, having the snipe and impact is just so good for what it wants to be doing. So really it is still the 7 energy Kurapika show. So if you want a big style of green energy game plan, then still Kurapika is going to be king. Now moving into the blue specified slot, and this is a fun one to play. This deck is all about finding all the right combinations, drawing up a bunch of cards with the Kilua and Gon. But again, one of the key downsides that you'll find with this deck is that we just did not have a way to switch our characters to active, but now we do have the 5 energy Kilua, which does say if it's on your front line, you can only activate this ability if you have used a specified slot affinity card from your hand this turn. So again, this does require a little bit more setup. It does require us to play cards, but you can choose one of your other characters in your field and turn it to active, which can then help turn online things like the Gon. So is this good enough? No, but it's getting us there. It is still an engine that we can have access to that is a 4K attacker, so we're still happy to play it. But I really would have loved to see another raid that plays more into the specified slot. So we do have the other Gon here, which again is fine, and it does have the when played and when sideline effects while also being a get trigger, but it's still going to be all about the Kilua and Gon show that gives you the extra draw and filtering through your deck. But again, this style of strategy is all going to be about focused on these specified slot cards, making sure that you have 4 of them and getting the various bonuses for doing so. And again, the 2 energy Gon here just making an appearance for, getting to try out some of the new cards, but unfortunately it's still something that just doesn't hit the right notes that we wanted to, but we needed more raid fodder, so this is a Gon that we can still run in the deck overall, but doesn't help the overall game plan for what we really were hoping to see with specified slot. Now, my favorite deck from the set, and one that does hurt quite a bit here, is the Genthru. And again, the biggest issue overall with this card in particular is that Genthru not being able to hit 4Ks naturally does hurt quite a bit. However, what is super funny is that the new color trigger helps this deck out a ton, and also the Gon deck here just makes sense because we have the 0 filter Gon that we want to be playing, so we do have another 4K raid we can lean into, but the out card is just such a blast to turn your risky dice into extra removal, but again, this is a card that does require a little bit of extra setup. So we don't exactly have the extra removal that we were hoping for with this strategy that is all focused around looking at the top card of your deck, trying to get the effect off, and if you do get the criteria, have some type of big payoff, either blowing up something on your opponent's board or again using out to get that removal as well, where Genthru is the other option. So again, we can also buff stuff up. There's a lot of cool things you can do with this deck, and it's all about the, to make the magic equivalent, like the Sensei's Dividing Top style of strategy. So if you love more like deck manipulation and having like those, you know, big payoff moments, then this deck is just an absolute blast to play. Now, again, unfortunately, my boy Genthru just not being able to hit 4Ks naturally does hurt quite a bit, so we have to rely on the Bara, which is only a 3K, which can also feel really bad because it's not a 4K. You know, that can hurt us quite a bit. But if you love to have the top of deck shenanigans and have big payoff that way, then the Genthru deck can absolutely be a cheeky pick. Now, last but not least, we got to talk about the purple decks, and I am just including the combined version here because I think this is still going to be the overall best version for the deck, but I am a little bit hesitant on the ratios and whatnot, so this is one that I'll just say up front, I have no idea how this is going to test. I have something that I need to spend time with myself. I personally really like the testing gate with Kilua from set 1 that you could do, but unfortunately with the new Crollo, you don't have the deck space to add that card because now you have to run things like Franklin because of the way that the new raid, or excuse me, not a raid, but 3,500 works and discarding for the effect. So there's like all these extra hoops you have to go through that I'm not sure if it's ultimately worth it. Like the new Illumi package might just be good enough to where you just run the other Illumi, and unfortunately you lose out on the draw Illumi for the 3 double energy, but the new Illumi, you know, plays better into the Zoldyck family. So I want to believe that the hybrid version is still better, but overall, I think a pure Zoldyck family might be kind of the takeaway here. But the Phantom Troops are always just so flavorful and so cool for how it all comes together that I wanted to give them a shout out. So again, here it's all about utilizing your Phantom Troops, making sure you're getting the right effects at the right time, and copying the effects for like a big swing turn. So if you are someone who likes comboing things together and piecing various parts, then this is definitely one to check out. And then last but not least, we have to go back to our tier list. And yes, unfortunately, Kenshin is going to be the big dog of the format to talk about, and one that is going to be here to stay for a very long time. And unfortunately, I think the rest of the Hunter x Hunter decks are just going to fall a little bit shy. I think that the Kurapika deck, the green traditional green, is going to be more of your, it still has good days. I think that it still has enough removal, filtering, and powerful attackers that it can get there. But with, again, respects to Kenshin, which just dropped, and to Yu Yu Hakusho and Kaiju number 8 that also just launched recently, all the attention is going to be on them, and it's probably going to take away from the Hunter x Hunter set. But if you are a fan of the set, it still feels like a more complete style of deck to play, which is really nice. Unfortunately, it's just missing a piece or two to really put it from a more competitive standpoint. So that is a quick recap of the Hunter x Hunter decks, and I apologize for just going through this very quickly. I've been sick and trying to recover, but I didn't want to delay putting out this video any longer, so definitely let me know what your favorite list is from the series. But until next time, my friends, look forward to the next Union Arena video. There's a lot more to get excited about next month, and I cannot wait to see how the meta shapes up going into the various regionals right around the corner. So until next time, my friends, stay safe, stay hydrated, and we'll see you in the next video. Cheers.